Hello, and welcome to the Psychology of Us. I'm Professor RJ Starr, and I'm so glad you're here with me today as we explore one of the most fascinating and deeply human emotions, jealousy. It's a feeling that can catch us off guard, leave us questioning our self-worth, and sometimes even drive us to act in ways we don't recognize in ourselves. Yet, jealousy is also an emotion that can teach us more about who we are and what we value if we're willing to understand it. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt that pang in your chest when someone else achieves something you wanted? Maybe a coworker received a promotion you've been working toward, or a friend shared photos of their dream vacation while you were at home balancing bills. Perhaps you've looked at someone else's relationship and thought, why can't I have that? Jealousy isn't just a fleeting feeling. It's one that has been written about in stories, studied in psychology labs, and wrestled with in every corner of the world. It's a universal experience, yet it's deeply personal to each of us. And what's even more fascinating is how it manifests differently, depending on our relationships, our insecurities, and even our cultural influences. Today, we're going to unpack jealousy in all its complexity. We'll explore where it comes from, why it shows up the way it does, and most importantly, how we can better understand and manage it. Along the way, I'll share some insights from psychological theories, real-world examples, and even a few personal stories to help illustrate this very human experience. By the end of this episode, my hope is that you'll walk away not only with a better understanding of jealousy, but also with a sense of empowerment to turn this often difficult emotion into a tool for self-reflection and growth. Now, before we dive in, let's take a moment to think about what jealousy really is. It's not just about wanting what someone else has, though that's part of it. At its core, jealousy is a fear of losing something or someone we value. It's the voice in our minds whispering, what if I'm not enough? Or what if I lose what matters to me? It's this fear, whether we're conscious of it or not, that gives jealousy its sharp edge. And the truth is, we all feel it. Even the most confident, self-assured individuals experience jealousy. The difference lies in how we respond to it. Excuse me. Jealousy is as old as humanity itself. Ancient myths and religious texts are filled with tales of envy and jealousy, shaping the lives of gods and mortals alike. Think of Cain and Abel from the Bible, or the jealousy that led to the Trojan War. These stories remind us that jealousy isn't new. It's part of what makes us human. And yet the way jealousy shows up in our lives today has evolved, shaped by modern pressures like social media, workplace competition, and the ever-present comparison culture we live in. In this episode, we're going to take a deep dive into the psychology of jealousy. We'll start by looking at its evolutionary roots, why it might have been beneficial for our ancestors to feel jealous, and how those same instincts still influence us today. Then we'll move into the cultural and personal factors that shape how jealousy manifests, including the role of relationships, attachment styles, and even childhood experiences. And of course, we'll talk about the impact of modern technology, how scrolling through Instagram or LinkedIn can leave us feeling like everyone else is living a better life. Finally, we'll explore practical strategies for understanding and managing jealousy, turning it from something that hinders us into something that helps us grow. So, as we embark on this journey together, I invite you to think about your own experiences with jealousy. When was the last time you felt it? What triggered it? And how did you respond? My goal today isn't to judge these feelings, but to help you see them in a new light, to understand them as part of a broader tapestry of human emotion, and to recognize that jealousy, like all emotions, carries a message. The key is learning how to listen. All right, let's get started. This is part 1, the roots of jealousy. Let's begin by exploring where jealousy comes from, its roots. To truly understand this emotion, we need to look back to our evolutionary past, consider the cultural lenses through which we view it, and even examine how it manifests in the early stages of our lives. Jealousy, in its most primal form, is a survival mechanism. Imagine our ancient ancestors living in small, tight-knit communities. Resources like food, shelter, and even reproductive opportunities were limited, and competition was fierce. For someone to thrive in that environment, they had to protect what they had, whether it was their partner, their standing in the group, or their access to critical resources. Jealousy then acted as a kind of alarm system, alerting them to potential threats. Evolutionary psychologists have argued that jealousy served an adaptive function by motivating behaviors that secured survival and reproduction. For example, in the context of romantic relationships, jealousy might have helped ensure paternity certainty. A man who felt jealous when his partner interacted with another man would have been more likely to guard the relationship, thereby increasing the likelihood that any children she bore would carry his genes. On the flip side, women may have experienced jealousy to secure their partner's emotional and resource investment, ensuring that their offspring would be well supported. This perspective helps explain why jealousy is often so intense. It's tied to fundamental human need: safety, belonging, and the continuation of our lineage. While we no longer live in caves or fight for mates with spears, these ancient instincts haven't disappeared. They've simply adapted to modern contexts. Today, instead of worrying about another tribe stealing our resources, we might feel jealous when a coworker gets the recognition we believe we deserve, or when a partner spends too much time texting someone else. Now, while evolution laid the foundations for jealousy, culture adds its own layers. What triggers jealousy and how we express it often depend on societal norms and values. In some cultures, jealousy in romantic relationships is seen as a sign of passion and commitment, a kind of proof that you care deeply about your partner. In others, it might be viewed as a weakness or an inability to trust. Take the concept of machismo in certain Latin American countries, for instance. Here, jealousy in men is sometimes tied to a sense of honor or masculinity, where guarding one's partner against potential rivals is seen as a duty. Contrast that with Scandinavian cultures, which tend to emphasize egalitarian relationships and individual autonomy. In these societies, overt jealousy might be considered immature or even toxic. Even within a single culture, norms around jealousy can vary dramatically over time. Think about how modern social media has transformed the landscape of relationships and competition. A few decades ago, you might have only compared yourself to the people in your immediate social circle. Now, with platforms like Instagram and TikTok, you're comparing yourself to people all over the world, most of whom you've never even met. This cultural shift has amplified the triggers for jealousy, making it an almost daily experience for many. Jealousy just doesn't appear out of nowhere in adulthood. Its seeds are often planted in childhood. If you've ever seen siblings squabble over a toy or a parent's attention, you've witnessed one of the earliest forms of jealousy. Psychologists call this sibling rivalry, and it's a phenomenon that sheds light on the developmental roots of this emotion. Children, especially young ones, are naturally egocentric. They see the world through the lens of their own needs and desires. When a new sibling arrives or a parent's attention shifts to someone else, a child may feel threatened. They might think, am I not enough? Will I lose the love and care I rely on? These fears can manifest as jealousy, even if the child doesn't have the words to describe it. Let me share a personal story. I once worked with a family where the eldest child, an 8-year-old boy, started acting out after his younger sister was born. He'd never shown behavioral issues before, but suddenly he was throwing tantrums, refusing to share, and even becoming aggressive towards his sister. Through counseling, we uncovered that he felt replaced, that his parents' attention, once solely his, was now divided. By helping the family validate his feelings and find ways to show him he was still loved and valued, we saw a significant reduction in his jealousy-driven behavior. This developmental stage is crucial because it sets the tone for how we handle jealousy later in life. Children who feel secure in their attachments and are taught to express their emotions in healthy ways are often better equipped to manage jealousy as adults. Conversely, unresolved childhood jealousy can carry over, influencing how we respond to competition, comparison, and relationships. So as we've seen, jealousy isn't just a random emotion that pops up out of nowhere. It's deeply rooted in our evolutionary history, shaped by the cultural norms we grow up with, and often takes root in childhood experiences. Understanding these origins is the first step toward recognizing why jealousy arises and what we can do with it. Next, we'll turn our attention to how jealousy manifests in our relationships and why it seems to thrive in today's hyper-connected, comparison-driven world. Stay tuned.
What if the story you've been telling yourself isn't the truth? What if it's been holding you back from the life you deserve? Every day we create narratives to make sense of our experiences. Stories about who we are, what we're capable of, and how the world works. These stories shape how we see ourselves, how we connect with others, and how we navigate challenges. But what happens when those stories no longer serve us? In the stories we tell ourselves. How personal narratives shape your life. Renowned psychology professor R.J. Starr guides you through a transformative journey to understand, challenge, and rewrite the narratives that define you. This book explores the psychology behind personal storytelling, showing you how narratives are formed, how they influence your life, and how you can take control of them. Through practical strategies, inspiring real-life examples, and psychological insights, you'll learn how to uncover the hidden beliefs and patterns driving your story. You'll discover how to challenge the narratives that limit you, reframe past experiences, and craft empowering stories that align with your values and aspirations. Imagine reframing setbacks as stepping stones to growth, seeing challenges as opportunities for resilience, and writing a story that reflects your authentic self. A story filled with optimism, gratitude, and meaning. Your personal narrative is not set in stone. You are the author, and your story is waiting to be rewritten. It's time to embrace your past, empower your present, and create a future that inspires you. The Stories We Tell Ourselves: How Personal Narratives Shape Your Life is now available worldwide on Kindle, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, and more. Your story isn't finished. Take control and write the next chapter today.
Now let's talk about the psychology of jealousy. Jealousy is often thought of as an emotion that rears its head in romantic relationships, but its reach is far greater. It shows up in friendships, families, and even professional settings, and its intensity varies depending on our personal experiences, attachment styles, and social influences. Let's take a closer look at how jealousy manifests in these areas and what psychological factors fuel it. Romantic relationships are perhaps the most common context where jealousy takes root. Picture this: your partner smiles at someone across the room, and a small, uneasy feeling begins to bubble up. Is it harmless? Is it a threat? Jealousy in romantic relationships often stems from fear of losing a partner's attention, affection, or loyalty. This fear can manifest in subtle ways, like checking your partner's social media for signs of infidelity, or in more overt behaviors like confrontation or control. Platonic relationships aren't immune to jealousy either. Have you ever felt a pang of jealousy when your best friend became close with someone new? It's not about romantic interest, but rather the fear of losing your place in the friendship. Jealousy in platonic relationships often mirrors the dynamics of sibling rivalry, a desire for exclusivity and reassurance that we matter. Then there's jealousy in professional relationships, which can be just as intense. Seeing a colleague receiving recognition, a promotion, or a coveted opportunity can trigger feelings of inadequacy or resentment. Professional jealousy often stems from perceived inequality, an internal dialogue that says, why them and not me? Attachment theory provides valuable insights into why jealousy manifests differently for different people. Those with an anxious attachment style, for example, may be hyper-aware of potential threats to their relationships and quick to feel jealous. This sensitivity often comes from deep-seated fear of abandonment. In contrast, people with a secure attachment style are generally more resilient to jealousy, as they tend to feel confident in their relationships and self-worth. Avoidant individuals may downplay their feelings of jealousy, suppressing them rather than addressing them. But that doesn't mean the emotion isn't there. It's simply hidden beneath the surface. In the age of Instagram and Facebook, jealousy has found a powerful new playground. Social media is a highlight reel, a carefully crafted version of people's lives that often showcases their best moments while leaving out the struggles and imperfections. This creates a fertile ground for jealousy to thrive. Imagine scrolling through your feed. You see a former classmate posting pictures from a tropical vacation, another friend celebrating a promotion, and a distant acquaintance announcing their engagement. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparison, asking yourself, why isn't my life that exciting? Why am I not achieving as much as they are? This constant exposure to others' successes and curated happiness can amplify feelings of inadequacy, making jealousy a frequent, almost reflexive response. Research in psychology has shown that social media exacerbates upward social comparison, where we measure ourselves against those we perceive as better off. This comparison isn't always fair, but it's deeply human. The more time we spend on these platforms, the more likely we are to encounter content that triggers jealousy, especially if we're already feeling insecure about certain aspects of our lives. One phenomenon that contributes to this is the illusion of scarcity. Social media makes it seem as though opportunities, love, or happiness are finite resources, that if someone else has them, there's less available for you. This isn't true, of course, but the perception can be powerful, driving feelings of jealousy and a sense of competition. At its core, jealousy often stems from fear of losing something or someone important to us, or fear of not being enough. But it's not just fear that fuels jealousy. Insecurity plays a major role as well. When we don't feel confident in our own worth, we're more likely to see others' successes or relationships as threats. Perceived inequality is another major trigger. If we believe someone else has an unfair advantage or is receiving rewards they don't deserve, jealousy can bubble up. This is especially true in professional settings, where performance and recognition are often tied to our sense of self-worth. Cognitive distortions can amplify these feelings. For example, catastrophizing, expecting worst-case scenario, can turn a small moment of jealousy into a full-blown emotional spiral. Imagine seeing your partner talking to someone attractive at a party. A passing interaction might suddenly become, in your mind, the beginning of the end of your relationship. These distortions feed jealousy, making it harder to see the situation clearly. Jealousy is also heavily influenced by our personal histories. If we've experienced betrayal or loss in the past, we may be more prone to seeing potential threats even when they don't exist. This hypervigilance can create a cycle where jealousy feeds on itself, growing stronger with each perceived slight. So jealousy, as we've seen, doesn't come out of nowhere. It's shaped by the relationships we value, the environments we navigate, and the thoughts we entertain. Social media has made it more visible and pervasive, but the cognitive and emotional roots of jealousy remain the same. In this next section, we'll explore the consequences of jealousy, what happens when it goes unchecked, and how it can impact our lives and relationships over time. Now let's talk about the consequences of jealousy. Jealousy is not just a fleeting emotion that passes without leaving a mark. When it arises, it often stirs a storm of emotional responses that can disrupt our mood, influence our actions, and if left unchecked, create lasting ripples in our mental health and relationships. To fully grasp its impact, let's examine both the short-term effects and the long-term consequences of jealousy. Let's talk about the short-term effects first, okay? When jealousy first strikes, it's visceral. The emotion tends to hit hard, sparking an immediate cocktail of reactions: anger, sadness, fear, or anxiety. These feelings can seem to come out of nowhere, hijacking our ability to think clearly or respond rationally. Imagine, for instance, that you're at a social gathering and you notice your partner laughing and chatting animatedly with someone you don't know. It's not an inherently threatening situation, but your mind begins to spiral. Are they flirting? Are they more interested in that person than in me? Before long, you feel a pang of anger mixed with insecurity, your stomach tightens, and your mood takes a nosedive. What started as a pleasant evening becomes overshadowed by jealousy, clouding your ability to enjoy the moment. This scenario is all too common. Jealousy activates the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, which triggers our fight or flight response. It's as if our brain perceives a threat, even if none truly exists. In romantic relationships, this might manifest as picking a fight with your partner or withdrawing emotionally. In friendships or in work, professional contexts, it might lead to passive-aggressive comments or avoidance. In each case, jealousy disrupts the flow of connection and communication, creating tension where there was none before. But jealousy isn't just about outward behavior. Internally, it can feel like a gnawing discomfort, a weight in the pit of your stomach. It's not uncommon for people to ruminate, replaying the triggering event over and over, each time feeling the same rush of emotions. This mental loop can make it difficult to focus, enjoy other activities, or even sleep. Now, while the short-term effects of jealousy can be intense, it's the long-term consequences that are truly damaging. When jealousy goes unchecked, when it becomes a recurring or dominant emotion, it can erode the very foundations of our mental health and relationships. One of the most significant ways jealousy impacts us is by undermining trust. In a romantic relationship, for example, frequent jealous episodes can create a cycle of suspicion and defensiveness. The jealous partner may start snooping through texts or questioning their partner's every move, which can lead the other person to feel controlled or mistrusted. Over time, this dynamic can chip away at the bond between them, creating resentment and emotional distance. Jealousy can also take a toll on your self-esteem. When we constantly compare ourselves to others or feel threatened by their successes, it reinforces a narrative of inadequacy. We begin to see ourselves as less attractive, less capable, or less deserving, and this can lead to feelings of worthlessness or a diminished sense of identity, making it even harder to break free from the cycle of jealousy. Chronic jealousy is also linked to mental health issues like anxiety and depression. For someone prone to jealousy, the fear of loss or rejection can become a persistent source of stress. This ongoing emotional strain can drain energy, reduce motivation, and contribute to feelings of hopelessness. In severe cases, jealousy may not even lead to obsessive or controlling behaviors, further isolating the individual and damaging their relationships. I once worked with a client who struggled with chronic jealousy in his friendships. He often felt left out or overlooked, even when there was no evidence to support these fears. Over time, his jealousy led him to withdraw from his friends, convinced they didn't value him. This isolation only deepened his feelings of inadequacy, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Through therapy, we worked on identifying the roots of his jealousy, stemming from childhood experiences of rejection, and gradually rebuilding his sense of self-worth. It was a long process, but it highlighted how deeply jealousy can intertwine with our personal histories and mental health. In professional settings, jealousy can be equally destructive. It can create toxic competition, foster resentment among colleagues, and even derail careers. A coworker who becomes consumed by jealousy might sabotage others' efforts, spread gossip, or withdraw from collaborative opportunities, all of which can harm both their reputation and their workplace relationships. One of the most insidious aspects of jealousy is how it narrows our perspective. When we're consumed by jealousy, we tend to focus on what we lack or fear losing, rather than appreciating what we have. This mindset not only diminishes our gratitude, but also blinds us to opportunities for growth and connection. Over time, this fixation on others' lives or achievements can rob us of joy and fulfillment in our own lives. It's as though jealousy builds a wall between us and our potential, keeping us stuck in a cycle of comparison and dissatisfaction. So you see, jealousy, when left unchecked, is more than just an uncomfortable emotion. It's a force that can erode trust, self-esteem, and mental health, leaving long-lasting scars. But while the consequences can be severe, they're not inevitable. So in this next part, we'll explore how we can manage jealousy effectively, turning it from a destructive force into an opportunity for growth and self-awareness. Now let's talk about managing jealousy. Jealousy is a natural part of the human emotional landscape, but it doesn't have to control us. While its intensity and triggers vary from person to person, jealousy can be managed effectively through self-awareness, emotional regulation, and intentional actions. In this section, we'll explore how to acknowledge and work through jealousy in ways that foster personal growth, strengthen relationships, and enhance your overall well-being. The first step to managing jealousy is recognizing when it rises. Often, jealousy is accompanied by a rush of emotions, anger, sadness, fear, or insecurity that can feel overwhelming. Instead of pushing these feelings away or pretending they don't exist, it's important to name them. Simply saying to yourself, "I'm feeling jealous," can begin to diffuse some of their intensity. Self-awareness involves looking inward and asking, what is this jealousy really about? Is it fear of losing someone? A belief that I'm not enough? Or maybe it's a sense of unfairness or exclusion. By identifying the root of your feelings, you gain clarity and can address the underlying issues rather than being consumed by the emotion itself. Mindfulness practices can be particularly effective in this process. For example, when you feel jealousy rising, take a few moments to focus on your breath. Pay attention to how your body feels. Tightness in the chest, heat in the face, or a knot in your stomach. Instead of reacting impulsively, mindfulness helps us create space between the feeling and your response, allowing you to choose a calmer, more thoughtful course of action. Self-reflection is another powerful tool. Consider journaling about your jealousy. What triggered it, how it made you feel, and what it might be trying to tell you. Sometimes jealousy highlights areas of our lives where we feel unfulfilled or insecure. By shining a light on these feelings, we can use them as a guide for self-improvement. One of the most effective ways to combat jealousy is by shifting your focus from others to yourself. Jealousy often arises when we compare ourselves to others, but these comparisons are rarely fair. Social media, for instance, presents an idealized version of people's lives, a highlight reel that doesn't reflect their struggles or imperfections. When we measure ourselves against these unrealistic standards, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Gratitude practice can help reframe this perspective. Instead of dwelling on what you lack, focus on what you have. Each day, take a moment to reflect on 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be grand or life-changing. Sometimes the smallest joys can be the most grounding. Research shows that gratitude not only boosts mental health, but also reduces feelings of envy and jealousy by shifting attention to the positive aspects of our lives. Reframing thoughts is another effective strategy. When you catch yourself thinking, they have what I want and I'll never have it, try reframing it as, their success doesn't diminish my potential. This shift acknowledges your own worth and reminds you that someone else's achievements do not take away from your ability to succeed. Resilience also involves setting realistic goals for yourself and celebrating your progress, no matter how small. Jealousy can sometimes be a signal that you're longing for growth or change in a particular area of your life. Instead of letting it paralyze you, use it as motivation to take actionable steps towards your own goals. Jealousy can put a strain on relationships, but it doesn't have to. When addressed openly and constructively, it can lead to deeper understanding and deeper connection. The key is communication. If you're feeling jealous in a relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, or professional, talk about it. Share your feelings in a way that's honest but not accusatory. For example, instead of saying, "You're making me jealous," try, "I've been feeling insecure lately and I'd like to talk about it." This approach invites dialogue rather than defensiveness. Healthy boundaries are also essential. If certain situations consistently trigger jealousy, it's okay to set boundaries to protect your emotional well-being. For instance, if scrolling through a particular social media account leaves you feeling inadequate, consider unfollowing it or muting it. Boundaries aren't about avoiding reality. They're about creating an environment where you can thrive. Trust is another cornerstone of jealousy management. In romantic relationships, for example, building trust involves not only being reliable and honest, but also showing empathy and understanding towards your partner's feelings. Trust creates a sense of security, reducing the need for constant reassurance. Finally, remember that relationships, whether with a partner, friend, or colleague, thrive on mutual respect and effort. Jealousy often stems from a fear of losing connection, but the best way to maintain and strengthen connection is by investing in it. Show appreciation for the people in your life, and don't be afraid to express your needs and concerns. When jealousy is met with empathy and collaboration, it becomes an opportunity for growth rather than division. Jealousy, it's a complex and often challenging emotion, but it's also an invitation, a call to look inward, to strengthen our sense of self, and deepen our connections with others. By cultivating awareness, building resilience, and nurturing trust, we can turn jealousy from a destructive force into a pathway for personal and relational growth. As we come to the end of this episode of Psychology of Us, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered about jealousy. We began by exploring its roots, looking at jealousy as an evolutionary mechanism that once helped our ancestors survive and protect what they valued most. We saw how cultural norms and developmental experiences shape our understanding and expression of jealousy, from sibling rivalries to modern social dynamics. And then we've explored the psychology of jealousy, how it shows up in our relationships, how attachment styles influence us, and the powerful role of social media in amplifying feelings of comparison and inadequacy. We examined its triggers like fear, insecurity, and perceived inequality, and how cognitive distortions like catastrophizing can make it feel even bigger than it is. Finally, we explored ways to manage jealousy, emphasizing self-awareness, resilience, and the importance of communication, of trust in relationships. Jealousy, we learned, doesn't have to control us. When approached with curiosity and compassion, it can be a guide, a signpost pointing us toward our values, our insecurities, and our growth. If there's one idea I hope you take away from today's conversation, it's this. Jealousy is a natural emotion, one we all feel at different times in our lives. It's not a flaw or a weakness. What truly matters is how we respond to it. Do we let it fester and erode our confidence and connections? Or do we use it as a mirror to better understand ourselves and our needs? I'll leave you with this thought. What if jealousy wasn't something to fear or suppress, but a call to grow? What if, instead of viewing it as a threat, we saw it as an opportunity, a chance to reflect, to strengthen our relationships, and to become more secure in who we are? Take some time to think about how jealousy has shown up in your life. What has it taught you about yourself? How might you use what we've discussed today to transform jealousy into a positive force? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences with jealousy. You can email me at ProfRJStarr@outlook.com. Whether it's a question, a story, or an idea for a future episode, I'd be delighted to hear from you. ProfRJStarr, and Starr has 2 R's, @outlook.com. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you found this episode meaningful, I hope you'll join me for our next one, where we'll continue exploring the rich and complex world of human psychology. Until then, take care of yourself and each other. Remember, understanding ourselves is the first step toward understanding the world around us. This is Professor R.J. Starr signing off with gratitude and encouragement. I'll see you next time on The Psychology of Us.